Starting now.
May 30, 2020, 30-year-old Palestinian alcoholic is murdered by the Israeli border police. Bachar T. Alcoholic was disabled by his autistic body, but also his richness by the Israeli border police had no second thoughts before empty out a bucket bolts of the body. Security caregiver heard shots of terrorist 3 shots and collapsed on the floor as he attempted to cling to his caregiver 4. Protection 1. The officer fired 3 shots with his M16 to the center of the young man's body. This is a one-off occurrence that the British man-Israel legitimacy has been built on the constant brutalization of the Palestinians through the border. Born 1902. Border enforces the process of domination, restrict imports and exports, selectively allow entry to people influencing international relations of production. The border patrol disciplining them to work hard, accept low wages. Speaking areas of the Eastern Mediterranean were divided to UN and indigenous areas. Opposed the idea Jewish state weeks Palestinian indigenous areas. Palestinian West Bank Gaza Strip did not become citizens of Israel. Color be opted they distinguished citizens from non-citizen residency burdens on economic life in the occupied territories of 1982, increasing Israeli settlement of the territory. Settlers and soldiers caged themselves behind steel grain bridges around Fort Less 1993. Israel put up checkpoints. Other soldiers remained free to cross. Only Palestinians were not allowed freedom imprisonment. Israeli road Palestinian patrols. Israeli border control only getting worse. Continuing violence forces Palestinian contempt recruiting a racialized society that enables Israeli colonial reproduction. Abdullah and Paris 16. Territorial control, mobilized imagination, perpetrated the modern state systems of control characteristic of the neoliberal globalization, meeting the expectation of the Israeli public and national stakeholders delimited territory over which prevails the state. It's sovereignty, no symmetry contain the Palestinian other screening of Palestinian population inside an area that has remained under Israeli control. Keep the Palestinian at an arm's length facility the smooth flow of the Israel's Palestinians are confined far from areas of Palestinian enclaves are isolated apart to global apartheid through border security. Israel has perfected apartheid violence and securitization all only being deployed against the Palestinians but exported internationally against the subaltern Miller 19. Immigration policy, for example, apartheid South Africa had no checkmate state. What that was worse than Israel. Behind South African apartheid has not been distinguished. It has been incentivized self-mobility, rights incarceration, and accelerated technology makes it possible serious assistance and technology sold, export, deployed around the world in global industry on dreamed of coming from Israeli company high-tech surveillance prices key to broader international politics of securitization, Israel border states, and others mark Palestinians non-humans, undeserving justices, justified violence with the air while they're creating the violence that claims itself Shalom, Korean 16. Dr. Abdul was only able to relive his homeland after the continuous coverage as power of spaces of death. The research found some burning 30 racism cannot be historicized. Began a former Israeli Prime Minister remarked, all races, the mass race, other races will serve as our slaves. Israel to increase its quality shoot to cripple policy claims to purity extends beyond race to ensure colonizer eyes with selling the intersectionality determined to must be eliminated. Palestinian bodies living in dead or nobody's exits at the limit of the human inaction justified the neutralization of a terrorist and normalized by public discourse. Israel performs democracy by upholding only the Jewish child of the Palestinian child and defining them as more terrorist racism turned into an economic calculation that brings about a system of violence against Palestinian women. Colonial Palestinians non-human, others always outside the law, therefore under serving of justice. Israeli security policy relies on Islamophobic constructions of the other, which guides international relations and creates conflict. The key is politics of entanglement acknowledges Israel as an extension of a European colonialism as inseparable from Islamophobia while giving present for Psalms 12-21. Construction of the New York signal shift for Islamophobia, the point of embrace on a common enemy, Muslim, even more human, the recent escalation, Israel, Palestine, victims, Palestinians killed, all lethal embrace among shared common enemy, the radical Muslim other informed suspicion, threat, and solidarity, signal, trying to disentangle anti-Semitism from European re-entangling with the Arab and Muslim post continuation of Europe's imperial project did construction of subaltern others international ramifications through its European corollaries. Israel versus the Arab, consider European Israel security system how their interconnected Islamophobia operates as a global imaginary. The construction of internal enemies. Part 3: open borders. Parties campaigning about the absolute move to innocence like those that enable the ongoing fossilization of Palestinian land and bodies, turning even nominal appeals to collective vulnerability into rationales for settlement, erasure, sleep, and Corey 21. Our history conflicting tactics offer from the vantage point of Palestinian indigenous people, the size through which violent parts affected extinction of indigenous life, the possibility of human life determined by colonial power, the praising dawn for hope that violence might be subsumed during the plateau while recognizing the threats of collective extinction, vulnerability must reinforce central to local and time of justice, resolving justice and national credibility, facing the common threat we do for Palestinian refugees, collective extinction, not a futurist, but across from their everyday values. In 1740, open borders are key to disrupt ongoing cycles of violence, resolving future tension borders and still tension through separation, integration is key to mutual respect. Thus, I firm resolve justice requires open borders between Israel and Palestine for human migration. Feinstein and Durwoody said 2000. In the case of Palestine's open borders are necessity for normal distance to the small area and intertwining would be impossible for two completely close societies to exist with hostile relations. Only possible path is mutual cooperation similar to the Northern Ireland experience of borders that minimizes the hostile feelings between the structures and outbreak of actual conflict. Borders prevent conflict in each side from gaining better perspective. The parties must limit psychopositive diabolical enemies to like the ability to empathize with others. Nationalism is self-reference. Dehumanization is crucial. The diverse individuals involved in repetitive contact will produce a cumulative effect, reduces in-group hostility, interdependently groups can create loyalty, preserve the system's integrity, should be the outcome. 90% perform diverse functions, joint activities, positive influence, attitude, 9% of the Israel, 8% of the Palestinians desire to continue working together, lay the groundwork for negotiations to resolve conflicts. Part 4. The role of balance of both for the debater, the best example is the intellectual discourse faces mediating nationalist and universalist impulses. The reps are of the bump set of the image of Abraham the colonist, example of an Israeli colonialism. Scholarship must embrace Abraham the exile, not an individual experiences like border killing, evacuation as a part of larger structures, loss and high focus only this new politics is repeating however the relationships between anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and colonialism paving the way for a newly emancipated world, ill intent. Jews and Palestinians joining each other for destiny, practically joining saying tragedies that Palestine exiles from writing the universe intellectual it is an assay side. The refugee can now join demythologizing nationalism, his Palestinianism had to coexist with the universalism Jews, and Palestine would have to reconcile similar existence in both conflictual states of Palestine's identities, I am multi-first perfecting per dad, or more imperative country that also intellectuals be both organic paragon keepers of liberties exile, inside navigators linked to was able to offer patterns of future liberty from both Zionism and Arab tyrannies, nationalism could be reduced as principles form the basis for a solution, kind of solution discussion, Palestine debates, key complex logic, and the law, namely, remember it is necessary to combat oppression, development, Israeli oppression, government March 21. Israel laws provide example for getting to draw public debate 2011 about law, peace, distinction of the commemoration of the as well as public expression, criticism, nation state 2014 law creates an analogy between Palestinian displaced and the Israeli Jews, effort to create about criticism against the discrimination, Palestinian game, making between combined for getting remembrance to control, public debate, legal realm, determine which narratives will be silenced, we will from giving preference to majority memory cut and omissions results from giving preference to majority memory cut and memory, educational space are central in combating Israeli erasure of Palestinian youth and student movement of a newly keen anti-colonial struggle of summer 21. Student generation born to exile contribute to anti-colonial struggle, Palestinians long live the world's largest refugee population, translations and becoming a constituent element of political mobilization for a nation force to reorganize in exile. Young Palestinians develop a hybrid identity. Student political activism has major contributions to decolonization. Present Asian and African youth are fundamental. Colonization requires a constant generational shift. Cut at generational shift. Yeah, sure.
Good for cross.
Yeah.
Cool. Why vote F?
Why vote F? Vote F to endorse the role of the ballot of voting for the debater that best exemplifies the result of intellectual. Also, justice requires open borders in Palestine.
Sure. Is there anything wrong with the F?
What do you think about that?
Like, does it have any flaws, inconsistencies?
I'm not going to tell you how to respond to the app.
I'm just asking if there are.
I know you're reading.
You don't need to tell me.
Yeah, don't. I know you're going to read some dumb, like, stupid, like, arguments on it. Like,
Dumb
I'm not giving
you.
you.
Jesus. Does the app spill over?
Does the app spill over?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd say that iterative investments in roll of the ballots, like the app, like in the app's roll of the ballot, probably spills over. Also, probably
Wait,
considering
probably or does?
does. Also,
okay,
considering
that's fine. No, that's fine. What's changed since you last read the app?
what's changed since
Yeah.
I last read the
Because
app.
it spills over, right?
Like, what's changed regarding what?
Yeah. Like.
Well, yeah,
what's
sure.
changed
So
when you
first of all,
created
like I'm sure
investments?
like plenty of people in this tournament have been having discussions about this app, about Israel
Were
Palestine.
they good discussions if they were negating the app?
What? I'm saying people like even like the fact that I've been reading this app and other people from like kind of been reading this app means that people in and outside of Brown have been having discussions over Palestine. Also,
Wait, but
there
why
are
is
ways.
that promoting good forms of education for Palestine if they're negating your true app?
What? I'm saying I think the app is true, but also there are ways there are ways you can try to respond to the app. I'm not going to
That's
give you.
fine. If I punch you, should I lose?
What?
Like, should I lose if I punch you? Should
What-
the
what's the
judges
implication
intervene
of
and
that?
vote against you?
What's the implication?
Wait, I'm just asking.
You're gonna say that I punched you the other day or something.
What?
Like that.
No.
I'm not answering that question.
I'm just asking if the
Dude, I
judge-
know, like, I'm not answering that
Okay,
question. That's a weird
Does judge
question.
intervention matter? Like,
What do you
should the
mean
judge
by that?
intervene?
In what way? I don't think the judge should be racist.
Okay.
I think the judge should intervene in favor of me. But I don't think he'll have to.
Does removing the border destroy the Israeli state?
Does removing? No, but it's necessary.
Okay.
And also,
so
we would
how
say
do you
that
solve for
probably.
control over the region?
Sure. Well, we would say that like a massive like portion of Israeli control over the region is through the border regime. So you can look at like the first part. It basically shows how Israel kind of constructs Palestinians as other through forcing them into these small enclaves and also economically strangles Palestine, which makes any form of resistance impossible, alongside like deaths of Palestinians. Then there's a global apartheid argument about how Israeli border technology and also Israeli border techniques have kind of like spilled over to other countries.
Wait, I don't get why that means that they won't have control over the state or the region.
Well, the AF doesn't fiat Palestinian control, but we
So
are
yeah,
saying
but Israel still has control.
we are
right?
saying the well, like what do you mean by that? I'm sure like once open borders like happen, there are going to be kind of discussions between Palestinians and
Okay,
Israelis
but there's still a
that are
chance that Israel gets control, right?
Well, we're saying Israel's control over Palestine
That's fine.
becomes
Taking
significantly
offense
lower.
external to the like affirmation of the resolution.
What does that mean? I have
Is
to
there
roll.
performative offense?
Like there's I don't get offense off of reading like
Okay.
the words in the app.
Yeah,
That's what you
perfect.
mean. I don't-
Do consequences matter?
do consequences
Yeah.
matter? I mean, like, I don't know. It depends, like, what consequences. We would say that an orientation towards consequences over kind of like structures of colonialism is probably bad. Like if you use like a consequence or like hypothetical extinction
I'm
to
gonna be
justify
honest, I think you're
colonialism.
just saying words right now.
Dude,
Can you just say yes or no?
Dude, I'm answering your question. If you just let me answer your question, I would say that consequences, in terms of like, if the consequences are used to evade discussions over Palestine or to justify colonialism, then you should not evaluate those consequences. That's a Slee and Corey card.
Sure. I'll send it. It's for them case. Okay, it's in.
What's the order on case?
Hmm?
What's the order on case?
It's on the dock, but it's just the roll of the ballot, and then like kind of an overview, and then stuff at the bottom that's like if time.
Okay. It's a goofy counterclaim.
What?
It's a goofy counterclaim.
Goofy? Tricky. That's tricky. Okay, did everyone get it? Anyone not good?
I'm downloading it.
Okay. Okay, cool. Counterplan established a one-state solution where Palestine goes back to its original pre-1967 borders, includes all religious sites enforced by the U.S. and its allies. Pollock 21. Less than 40% of Palestinian population supports it over one-state alternatives, and majority of them say that they prefer to reclaim all of historic Palestine, including the pre-1967 Israel one-state solution with Arabs and Jews holding equal rights. Come second and benefit one consultation derived based on polling Palestinians that it solves best under the rule of about two Palestine needs to its borders to keep Israeli settlers out. The reason the rule of the affirms scenario is true because Palestinians don't have a legally enforceable border to prevent settlement proves and against under truth listing as well. So we solve under both rule of about three recognition. The UN and Western nations recognize Palestine as a legitimate nation, which increases foreign aid diplomatic channels and creates new capabilities to de-escalate conflict. Solves the whole any risk of Israeli backlash is solved by U.S. enforcing the border. The only reason that Israel has power is because the U.S. literally made them no perms one ground their severance from the AFA and now defend something that is different from the useless test of NAC, which kills on the ground because they can shift out or whatever the one end offense, making it different, making it impossible to have any ground to logic the floating because can see the counterplay is better idea than the after AFC skills have perms allow shifting AFCs that never force the AFC to justify the resistance against scrutiny, which kills any education having substantive force actuality and function competitive exclusively defense something that isn't the AFN requires an extra step that has no benefits. You have five information competes. We say that borders are calculated logical borders justify why colonialism is a bad way because they own the land. The shell interpretation of borders generic parallel. The AF may not defend the open borders in one instance just April 19. Generic resolution can be removed by specifying particular insurance state college university on considered the United States therefore college university on considered the United States about inference college university failure upward inhale as go religious university failure the adverse qualification test is unlikely the coffee committee would have written the resolution with accidental interpretation the committee does not write for the circuit and voter 15 open borders should not be confused with no borders no borders in areas used to abolish identities and offensive open borders suggest that all people should be across original borders and remain its destination upon B and they defending open borders without occupied Palestine alone not international functionally committees no border applies to open borders upward tail and this aspect fills the upper tail it has to be saying that one border should be allowed does not entail that all borders should be open and average of the outing usually resolution doesn't see changes meaning the standards one limit they explode them explain the case like for competition to domestic which negative snaggling or generic impossible destroys regularity rational engagement by urging the border of the weak absent we can never answer question 2 is precision the res only predictable states point ground any shift that justifies arbitrarily jettisoning words in the resolution of littering neck prep independent voter registration the app wasn't legitimate you can't vote on it TV so you can write your app as a whole res advantage under Nazi fairness voter to base committee the entries of cause equal voting when participating minimum one ability participants not just the other max the drop the trans rating abuse of facts in the future means for reasonably encourage based on argument counts of this which incentivize must be small so skip 2 and 3 no RBS much legit theory good theater means neither so good or invading incentivize people to use and script counter should win on the RB increase the basis of bad norm skip 3 truth testing throw low about to do with the debater who proves the truth policy resolution one consider them only treats themselves a resolution written on ballot every turn handbook and NSC handbook that is labeled as state point cloud which means it the activity be written on ballot to affirm is true and gives the approval false that weighs a jurisdiction judge construction about the constitutional rules the activity when truth is transient is equivalent to speech time declaring winner which means the judge doesn't have the authority to change the rules on the other be a control teaching for evidence the rules are based regulated but even another model debate would be theoretically appropriate internally external by the fact we operate in such in the model 2 inclusion hypers the role of bracket out all positions which are yours a kills not being included means there generates a topic around become uses we don't know how to engage P excludes all types of violence that isn't the particular type you talk about which infers a comparison between violence versus 3 is the judge not educated and reinforcing the idea that they are allowed to write logical documents and reinforce political violence and K seeks the judge's rules to arbitrate their own objectively not answer decisions to educate people that's just not their role the NC I value right that is not national one has to fallacy examples of goodness build defining the ultimate quality more 3 good is in capability definitely no hearts of good a symbol and definable and consider your element defined like vibrations but there are not what we see maybe true that all things are good also something else you any thought that other properties actually defining good 2 industrial fails incoherent just by rational by not logical for habit of 4 happen again no requires whatever reason that there's after the years must have a specific of all the basic theory more than enemies don't start referring characters and self by asset for a reason to mirror it, and you can see the authority of reason self only thing follow to it that requires universal flexibility, willing and freedom. Violation is a contradiction because after reason presupposes your ability to decide, pursue, and in pursuing your freedom violation, you will ability to take action. The first thing which is like training is impossible to establish extra follow that is a precondition for all logical ability of any proposition. However, we require an enforcement mechanism. The principle is right claims candidates to state for all always the obvious infinite freedom violation absence save our 10 right from direction possible nature being never zero right only public authority problem all problem indeterminacy represent will all know for legal public authority united operate by being allowed to will regular behalf of everyone interaction with universal laws everyone is arbitrary choices the standards gets instance will allowed to will for one or materiality always a is mandatory power just by one person wrong just humans other change behavior which means the better movability be action guiding and comprehensive explanation how individuals should lead their life change their behavior on just individuals who are affected by the odds give the ideal theory so the contention I contend that just in our open borders human migration and contradiction establishing borders are sharp division between nations that are meant to keep individuals out that open borders contradiction is no longer a border if the individuals are free to transgress to choose the constitution all lateral requires borders men to be 12 every action civilization also is self-constitution or community that binds itself by laws defining boundaries territory as well so the will can extend under its borders those who are full members of sovereign distinguished 3 perpetual peace right recognition of states sovereignty and properties key to international peace ben be 12 a permissive principle or after reason give authorization to put all others under obligation refrain from using objects of choice because we have to first take them across republic recognition of rightful borders is essential for perpetual peace is to be achieved case. Debate is structured by a gentle fantasy and impotent demand on the political demand on debate to answered and alleviated by judge resources and act around the ensures the demand for action becomes facing on the drive which leads to holistic analysis actual desire fantasy their model of politics should resist the mastery itself refusing demand of a new form of political subjectivity and aims to desire number 12 radical globalization put a little possible the democratic demand to generate or production of enjoyment therefore overstates the potential of the democratic demand and positive resistance symbolically constitute corrective interest and investment and wide determined political consequences shortcomings of demand offers an isolation from the practice of investment and imaginary relations underwriting radical demand skip the next 2 cards for now the overview one removing wall doesn't remove tension more actions fighting each other because an increasing tension escalation tension undermine the goal of the act because it really use Palestine who are aggressive as justification of all more Palestine where outweighs because rectifying historical balance Israel if you cause more in the future shoot the act doesn't have solvency where border recognizing conditions of tension for the future of Palestine and Israel removing the border doesn't destroy the Israeli state which means no solvency for control over the region because the ability to pass through the doesn't grant the right to land for Palestinians through the forwards the act is used to be in there's no chance that Israel grants Palestine unrestricted access to their land given the history of violence means the act does nothing and merely cruel optimistic thought experiments to make themselves really like they've done something 5 double either anger after leaders on walls allows people to say that it says Israeli language turns your creepy out method because you are giving back the land proven you literally highlighting parts that said they'll return land or be giving back the land which you are entering which is a voter because it allows the act to defend infinite positions such as self-world hunger which makes necessary positive and reciprocal stakes and net worse for Palestinians go into Israel they are the ones conflicted that violence and religious conflict they hate won't stop one Palestinian enters only make it easier for Israelis to extend it because evidence force me to invade religious conflict is violent I'm either forced to defend that Israelis or Palestinians are right in a religious conflict to implications A is violent because it may delegitimize someone's life experience so leave for the valid to be advice intervention by someone something that people are born being passionate about and debate influences from royal outside influence made mindset that attempted to reformulate the structure real world problems that debate will fail 90 graffiti turn right the words destroy the West Bank wall all over the ballot take one from their strategy but for us that causes terror because people will see that the round was bringing attention to the round in their discussion to create real meaningful change in the community go back to the Colbert evidence on the real valid when I see as misunderstood function of power within debate this blend is not merely reservoirs of social regulation but instead concerned with this relation ideals Colbert 22 neoliberalism is nothing more than a free flow of effects that an apparent resistance this blend is achieved by the way techniques that turn attention and carry on whereas the subject is nothing more than a point of flow the project one conversion to the LM version copies of event on Amazon the universe one nothing more than public impact research will control my amount of citations and more incentive outputs it doesn't matter what it said so much that everything flows the same web cut the credit web
Can you send a mark on?
yeah for sure Alright, sent.
Cool. Alright. You good for cross?
Yep.
Okay, let's start on this counterplan. Do you know what Israel and Palestine's borders looked like pre-1967?
Yeah, Palestine had all the religious sites.
So you're just returning to religious sites of Palestine.
That's
nothing else.
exactly what it says.
But that's not a one-state solution. A one-state solution is only one state.
Wait, yeah, that's the argument. I'm confused what you're
Also,
saying.
okay, dude, you just don't know what like Palestine's borders looked like. That's fine.
Sure.
Why should Palestinians trust the U.S.?
Yeah, well, there are arguments for why it's specifically key for the U.S. to recognize Palestine.
Well, it's the U.S. enforcing it, so why should Palestine trust U.S. enforcement?
Well, when the U.S. enforces it, it proves that they're recognized. Like, we can fiat that. I think if the app
So
is
why
able to fiat
so why won't like the U.S. stop recognizing Palestine?
well, we're fiating that they don't.
Okay, what does U.S. recognition do?
Yeah, it says specifically that Western nations recognize them as legitimate, which increases foreign aid, diplomatic channels.
Okay, wait, let's look at this card. So this card seems to say pre-1967 borders are distinct from a one-state solution. It says, quote, including pre-1967 Israel. A one-state solution comes in second. So I'm confused
Wait,
about
no,
what
no,
your
no,
crown
you're
context is
misreading
doing.
the article. It comes in second to something else.
Bro, have you like ever looked at an image of Palestine's borders like pre-1967?
I mean, you could put an image in the doc.
Sure, that's fine. These no perms arguments. Where are the fairness first justifications?
Well, fairness is a voter from topicality.
But where are the fairness first justifications?
Why do we need fairness first justifications?
What are you even
haven't
talking
justified
about?
fairness
You're reading a
past.
shell without voters, bro. What are you doing?
Where
Okay,
is the
these-
voters are there?
Where? Okay, show me.
Bro,
Where are the
fairness
where
is a
voters?
voter. Debate is competitivity. Intrinsic
Okay,
requires
cool.
equal
Now,
value
now
of
where's the
participation.
warrant? Okay, why does debate intrinsically require like I guess procedural fairness?
Wait, the argument is that in order to debate in a competitive activity and not disrespect someone else, we should be on equal playing fields to debate,
Okay.
i.e. fairness.
Okay, cool. These constitutivism arguments.
Sure.
Why does it matter? Like, let's go to this resolution argument. Why does it matter that something is like written on the ballot?
Yeah, sure. It proves it's the stasis point of clash and what NSDA wanted for us, like us to clash for, right? They wouldn't assign a resolution to everyone.
Why do
for
we
us to
care about
just
what
arbitrate.
NSDA wants?
Well, because we're debating in an NSDA.
But why do
tournament.
But why does that mean we care about all of NSDA's rules?
Well, we have made arguments for why abiding by the rules are good.
Okay,
because
cool.
we're inside
Let's
of the
go to
activity.
this. Let's go to this this con framework.
Yeah.
So this first card, like, where's your warrant that borders are sharp divisions? Like, why can't borders exist but just be open?
Wait,
Like, your entire contention seems to just be saying that that open borders aren't borders. Why are they not borders?
wait, because you're able to freely move from. So like.
But they're still called borders. They're open borders. They
Wait,
still
no,
delineate
no,
who belongs
you're-
in and
you're
out. So where's your con
misunderstanding
offense?
the NC. Okay, the Benevieve evidence says if everyone's able to freely move, then we can't construct an omnilateral will, right? Because we can't construct a community of people
Wait,
insofar
where does it
as
say
anyone
like?
and
Oh
everyone
wait,
can
where does
move
it
through
say if like everyone is able to freely move? I don't see freely movement. I just
Wait,
see
It
distinguished.
says borders are requirements, and it's talking.
Right,
in the
but why
context
aren't
of
open
closed
borders still borders? They have
Wait,
border in
it
the
is
name.
talking in the context of closed borders. Read the card.
Dude, where does it say anything about movement? Just like read me that line.
Wait, okay, that's time, but also like it literally says that drawing borders is good. You don't
Open
draw
borders.
borders if everyone
Open
can go
borders.
through them.
Okay, cool. I'm sorry. Okay, that's 48 seconds. Alright, it's out.
Oh, sorry.
The order is app starting with the roll of the ballot and then top down and then top down on your arms.
Wait, top down on like the one NC case answers, you mean?
No, like top down on your apps. So I'll line by line the one and see case answers.
Yes, that's what I just said. Okay.
Yeah.
The doc is like the CI stuff.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Alright, everyone good?
I'm sorry, what was your order?
It's just apps starting with the roll of the ballot and then top down and I'll line by line their arguments and then top down on the ops.
Okay.
Starting right. extend the role of the ballot proper was undercovered for the debater that best exemplifies the intellectual in exile. The intellectual in exile looks at Palestine-Israel conflict not just as an isolated thing, but as a part of international structures, while also ensuring they account for specificities in Israel-Palestine. It is try or die. They're not giving you reasons that they're able to solve Israel-Palestine, which means you have to default to a role of balance reps. First, here impacts reason comes first. One, accessibility and ballot proximity. Anything other than practicing reps fighting Israel-Palestine means exclusion is normalized in debate. So many people at this term is saying Israel good. That outweighs Israel proximal obligation as a judge and educator. Be controls in controlling fairness education and pushes people out of the debates, so it makes it impossible to get education otherwise really use as tools to hurt the marginalized. And C, in a final talk, you have the power to change people's perceptions of issues and people who ultimately go on to sort of become future policymakers or future actors. So you have to hold the line. Three sides having just said anything other than voting under the role of misconduct will be ignored and perpetuate in debate, i.e. the entire of their truth testing strategy, not trying to interact with the 1AC and their counterpunch test, which is super bad, just is a misreading of Palestinian history. I forgetfulness, erasure, sides having been used to justify Zionist parties destroying Palestinian land. Sleeping Corey Fidel, government and Taraj. Now let's go to substance. Substance proper is job machines. You should just give me the benefit that regardless of their winning defense response extended close Israel would result in Palestinian death and economic destruction. Denial of outside entry forces Palestinians sneak across the river for low-paying jobs in long place. Warranty also otherwise Palestinians keeping them in arms, like making group organizing possible, isolating them. Conceded the global apartheid of Miller, Shalhoub, Kerber, can out at least a system of global apartheid that harmed people. That harmed people. Now let's go to the line by now let's go to the line by the Army of Salty. No removing border solves conflict which come from people not knowing the truth and not sort of cooperating. But once you remove Palestinians from the enclave, that solves your arguments. The agential fantasy argument one is try or die. Two, this argument this has a super weak argument, weak one. It's not sort of implicates specifically to this full. Three, no. We can sort of use movements to sort of convince other people to make political change in the context of Israel-Palestine relations. Help Muslim suffering in the basis. The sort of drive argument already responded to that. The removal tensions argument. They've already responded. You should be try or die. This isn't it's sort of try or die. And also we still talk about our method. Our method. The sort of double. We don't tear down the. We don't sort of lead to a one-state solution. We don't sort of like fiat a one-state solution. But the form is a prerequisite. Also takes out the graffiti term. Makes no sense. You can bring attention from the one. Also know you're causing Muslims harm by sort of making us lose when we're reading our cases. Now to go to the count plan. First of all, perm to the AF and the count plan. There's literally no competition so far. So you can pass the AF and then sort of go back to old borders. It's not a question of enforcement, just the existence of the border. Second, does that enforcement by the U.S. sort of means a one-state solution will harm Palestinians insofar as the U.S. has always sort of made appeals like the Camp David Accords to help Palestinians, but they ultimately end up harming them. Also, the pre-1967, there were two states and the borders were super bad. They just don't understand their Palestinian history. Group all their theoretical arguments. They group all their theoretical arguments. They're sort of bad for fairness as far as they can just read a count plan shift and shift out of it. There's also no implication of fairness. Now let's go to the shell. Counter-interpretation. I can classify Palestine one next time is proven true by self and CP and LPG 10. When see the West Nile virus, only about 1% of actually carries empirically. Problems levels of fusion generic sense true. One pigs are structuring 10 device read them because of time solid burn slopes and problems carries like 7 times UV on every on fake force. Late breaking debates you can read multiple zone universal advantage and truly true too. Functional Israel Palestine one of the most discussed border conflicts in academia and the fact that disclosure should definitely solve all of their offense government terrorist impact and see recommend discuss Israel and the laws connect all where they tried South African control discourse users sees non-neutral Christian rules how so forgetting gets enforced the fairness argument. No, there's no claim more impact. Also accessibility is a prior accessibility sort of a prior question. Also takes out the drop that also sort of takes out the drop the debater arguments. But now let's go to the truth testing argument. First of all, these constitutive arguments once again don't have claim more impact. Just because the resolution says something doesn't mean we need to follow them. Also, there's no claim about jurisdiction. And purely from judges voting on TS all the time. This sort of racism argument. No, this sort of racism argument. No, the only role of the outside ours can force judges to sort of make these valid statements, sort of change their views and debate views. The educators argument. There's no warrant for this. The sort of confirm one double bind. Either Kant can critique genocide, which means the office just flows af, or it can't, which sort of means it's repugnant. The arguments about explaining oppression, also there's files Israel Palestine. There you group their contention. All of it's about borders in general, but we are still defending borders, i.e. open borders. We can still separate people, but we are defending closed borders, which sort of means I have the offense. Also, we hijack as far as the Israeli state is illegitimate, but the affirmative solves that, which means that's a prerequisite to the unallowed rule.
Okay, 4 minutes. What was the answer to the graffiti term?
The answers to the graffiti term were like, one, it makes no sense. You can also bring attention to the win, and two, you don't have there's no reason to bring attention, and three, no causing stealing my arguments sort of like causes psychological violence.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, case. Quickly on T, quickly on counterplan case.
Alright. I'm good.
Cool. Every judge good?
I'm good.
Cool.
T, we're kicking it. The impact turn doesn't count because you conceded no RVIs because it encourages baiting theory, and you didn't make an argument for why it's an independent voter. Just a reason that T takes it. It takes out T. The counterplan we're kicking it. It was conditional, means the permutations go away. The case 3. The story of the 2-1R will be presumption. If I explain one slippage in the app scenario, you should instantly sign your ballot negative. The first argument we're going for is the Lundberg evidence. It was so mishandled. That's the agential fantasy link. The affirmative model demand where we ask the question of what ought to happen rather than what we can make happen creates a psychic split between the subject and his inability to fulfill that demand. The affirmative's inability to come to terms with the psychic split makes debate incredibly painful and dooms debate to a state of repetition compulsion where we return to the moment of loss, i.e. our inability to act because we believe the symbolic satisfaction of this process will provide us the wholeness we are lacking. The impact is a toxic homeostasis where Palestinian violence becomes a rhetorical trope we require more of, so we can keep reading these apps to get ballots and recognition from the judges or master. It turns the app because it means your impacts are a disadd to your own ballot and turns debate into a world where things like Trump's election aren't seen as affecting real people, rather as uniqueness for our impact scenarios. I'll give an example. In the WTO, there were terrorists who are like, oh look, I want to be recognized as a terrorist, which proves they didn't actually care about being terrorists. Rather, they were just doing it for the purpose of establishing demands, i.e. seeming like terrorists, rather than actually, because if you're a terrorist, like, you obviously don't want to be recognized, right? The app is a pretty similar example. There's no spillover from the app proven by CrossX, how they just say, oh, people have learned about the app. No, they haven't. They negate your app every single time and think that it's wrong. Everyone talks about how shit it is. There's also just no change that you've created inside of the debate space. You just establish demands for the point of saying you do something, but don't do shit in the real world. You literally are reading an app saying, oh, look at us, we do something, and don't do anything outside. It's try or die. You say that it's try or die. What the fuck? There's no warrant for this argument. Every single person on your team reads this app. Every single person on your team read this app. Every single app round. There's no way that it's try or die in one final round? Like, what? This makes no sense. You say there's weak warrant. It was a conceded card. How does it have a weak warrant? You say that we should use movements to convince other people to make political change. How the fuck does this interact with the card? I just explained how your movement literally takes out your own movement because all you do is read it for the purpose of ballots rather than actually the point of establishing the demands, which means that it doesn't make sense for you to say that we should also use movements to convince other people of our movements. Like, what? The second card we're going for is the Colebrook evidence. By the way, it was cold conceded. There's an advertisement just said, critique is easily turned into commodity. Nike uses Colin Kaepernick's protest to sell shoes and jerseys that are made by literal black slaves. Amazon tells radical scholarship alongside reactionaries, and Pfizer and Comcast change their logo for Pride Month while simultaneously donating millions to the LGBTQ communities. Global patterns are modeled in debate. All the greedy institutions within the so-called community use your advocacy to legitimize and sustain themselves. Camps, tournaments. The NSDA would absolutely love your app. Remember that tournaments charge per entry. Many camps are $4,000, and the NSDA gets scholarships and memberships due that scale with participation. Debate being more woke makes it far easier to sell those experiences. This is what we mean when we say the general content of the AC will always rescue K to a moral superstructure of hyper-capitalist institutions. This is offense. Debate can claim to be radical, progressive, or anti-racist by pointing to emancipatory content like your app being rewarded, but in the form of debate, it remains violent, predatory, which means you should vote negative to reject the idea of the affirmative and stop allowing the content to be co-opted by the system. You don't do shit for Palestine. Your education gets co-opted by debate. Obviously, going outside of this round, no one talks about this shit. All you do is allow tournaments to be like, look, a Palestine app won our fucking tournament. Oh my god, who gives a fuck? The last argument, or the next argument we're going for, which was cold conceded, by the way, like, it's a cold, those are two cold conceded case turns. Like, you should have your ballot signed. But the graffiti argument. Going for the graffiti permit solves best under your method. The judge writes that Palestine is good all over the ballot and shows pictures of people like dying due to Palestine, etc. But votes negative. There are a couple of implications. First, it causes controversy because people disagree with the decision, start to wonder what happens. This is finals of a bid tournament. People will be like, oh my god, what happened? Why did they vote for Spencer versus Amon, versus Spencer versus Amon? And people will cause controversy because like, oh, it's a screw, and then it forces us to actually like talk about the decision. Two is it's a strategy of objection where we sort of abject images into debate and abject the fact that something like Palestine is something that's good into debate and force people to like read the ballot. Three is it's empirically proven. At an online tournament last year, someone read this permutation against a small school K and won. Over 50 people in the Discord chat were spamming about how the kid won, and it raised awareness about small schools debaters because that's literally all they were talking about. They're like, oh look, this small school kid from Alabama lost on a graffiti permutation. What the fuck is this? And they started talking about the content of the critique, which proves it is an empirical example. We'll do the line by line. You make the argument that it brings attention to the win. No, you don't get attention from the win. You see a W on tab room. Oh my god, Amon beat Spencer for the third time in a row. Woohoo. The second argument about stealing my arguments cause psychological violence. This doesn't make sense. I'm not stealing your arguments. I'm creating a counter method to better inject your arguments into debate. Your argument is just, hey, let's read education or be educated, like, and educate people about Palestine. I'm saying no, let's force people to think about Palestine by forcing people to look at the ballot and see why Amon lost this round. The last argument, you've conceded 3 reasons why your case has no solvency, which should be GG, game over. Amon was terrible in the line by line of the case debate. He conceded like half of the arguments. You've conceded the forcing me to evade a religious conflict is violent because I'm either forced to defend that Israel or Palestinians are right in a religious conflict. The implication is that it's violent because it delegitimizes someone's real life experience for the ballot and invites intervention by something that people are born being passionate about. I'm Jewish. I probably don't want to have to affirm the fact that my like identity should be fine, right? This forces me to actually engage in discussions of religious conflicts, which is just not what debate should be, and probably forces people who are like Jewish to intervene against your app, which means that it probably has a bad implications in debate. You've also conceded the argument that it's net worse for Palestine to go into Israel because they're the ones that inflicted the violence due to a religious conflict, and that the hate won't stop when Palestine enter. It'll only make it easier for Israelis to extend it. Look, okay, here's the case debate, right? There's a conceded card, a card that basically is conceded, that both turn case. There's 3 conceded analytics on case. One's an independent voter, one's a turns case argument, and one's a better method under their roll of the ballot. There should like be no way you sign an app ballot.
Alright, running prep, sorry. The order is just going to be the starting the ballot.
Alright, everyone good? Starting? Good.
Spencer, you're about to lose for the third time in a row against me. Not only was Spencer a total dick in the 1 year and probably racist towards Muslims, but his arguments were absolute dog shit. First of all, send the world while they conceded. The round should be evaluated under who is best. The intellectual, the exilic intellectualist means you want an analysis of Palestine and reading of Palestine. I'm going to give you multiple reasons they lose under this rule of law for accessibility, but framing issues. None of their arguments were contextualized to the rule of law first, and they have conceded all of our reasons. Debates over Palestine or good and spill, which proves our method is good. That's Salih and Corey Fadil, Gutman and Tirosh, which says that discussions over Palestine educational spaces force people to stop ignoring Palestine and erasing Palestine history and instead of orienting them towards taking action. So yes, the app does something because I guarantee you before this app was read, half the people in this room not only did not give a shit about Palestine, but did not know anything about border conflict, which means the affirmative is the only hope of sovereignty. They say we need to be oriented towards movement building, but that is the app. They were reading the wrong app. You're not just a value statement. We were oriented towards movement building. That's a world about that always because the only way for anyone to go on the real world is they consider this real argument and solve issues in Israel, Palestine, to be aware of them and have engaged discussions about them, which means we are not merely getting into the hype. We are not commodifying Palestine. The Lundberg evidence, they're providing issues with the app, but they do not have a counter sovereignty. They have not given you an alternative way of trying to go about educating people over Israel, Palestine, or solving, which means all of their arguments are defensive at best, except for the shitty graffiti arguments, which I'll get to later. Next of all, now we're going to start getting to the Islamophobic arguments from Spencer. Brace yourselves, and if you don't think any of these are at all remotely Islamophobic, then maybe you have an issue that should get diagnosed. Let's go on the line. First of all, the WTO terrorist argument. Why did Spencer see an about Muslims and automatically associate with terrorists? That should automatically be a reason to drop them. Next, the argument about commodification. How am I commodifying Palestine when you are trying to read this graffiti army? That is definitely commodification. I'm Muslim. I care about Palestine. The fact that they're assuming I don't care about it is definitely bad. Just like my other teammates. The reason we read is because we actually care about Palestine. Which takes those other arguments. Also about the Colin Kaepernick argument. How is the app first of all related to Colin Kaepernick? But second, even if it is, the app is not a form of sort of corporate commodification. Even if we are somehow a form of commodification, which we definitely are not. They are not providing you an alternate way of solving, which means you have to vote for that. Next, let's go to this. Then have to vote for that. The co-option, but the hyper-real. These arguments make no sense. They do not have a claim, warrant, impact. They are not well explained. Do not vote for them. They do not vote for them. The argument about graffiti. Now I'll go to the graffiti argument. This argument makes no sense. First of all, what's your counter method? And second of all, no, what people are just going to think is, oh, this app is dog shit. Just like he kept on saying, if this app loses, people are just going to think the app is dog shit. No one knows what was written on. No one sort of knows what was written on the ballot. But also, but sort of also, it doesn't matter because this is not linked under the rule of law. You should still drop them even if they are winning this graffiti argument, insofar as they are not embracing the exilic intellectual, which is the orientation towards Israel Palestine that is necessary for us to productively handle conflict and spillover. Next, let's go to this argument about how I'm being violent towards him. Bro, if you take attacks on Israel as attacks on your Jewish identity, then maybe you should revisit your views about Israel. This is exactly why arguments like this affirmative are needed, because Israel, because sort of attacking Israel is not a form of anti-Semitism, it's not a form of anti-Semitism or terrorism, as you claimed. Also proves absolutely, insofar as all of your arguments about how Palestinians are terrorists that are going to destroy Israel. That is definitely messed up. You should drop